Hello guys, how are you all? Welcome to my channel. So, today we are gonna see, what if Naruto x female Shikamaru, part 2, subscribe if you enjoy the video, let's start the story. Another troublesome day. An annoyed expression was something that not too many people saw when it came to Shikamaru, but she ignored the stares in favor of looking towards the pink-haired brat in front of her. To be honest, she wanted nothing more than to give up and take a nap, but the motivation she had at the moment made it so that she couldn't even if she wanted to. Seriously, it was bad enough that she had agreed to fight the girl, but the fact that she was actually aiming to win. She was certain that more than a few people were going to stare at her in shock. Turning to the side a bit, she took note of her first friend, Choji, looking towards with a bag of chips. She raised an eyebrow at him, getting a shrug from the big-boned boy. Well, it seemed that her oldest friend wasn't going to be too surprised either way. Shika had proved more than once that she could get motivation, and both the Akamichi and the Uzumaki that she was friends with agreed when it came to that a motivated Shikamaru, while slightly scary, was nice to have on their side. That kind of reminded her of the prank that she had set up with Naruto to get back at some of the bullies that had been going after Choji. The end result was several students of both genders being tarred and feathered in a style that was reminiscent of an old cartoon that Shika barely remembered from her old life. Play Naruto Ost. Fake. The smirk that made its way onto face at the memory caused a screech of indignation to come from the pink-haired banshee as she charged towards Shikamaru. Letting out a deep sigh, along with a what a drag, the black-haired 9-year-old moved out of the way of the punch, putting her leg out in front of her to trip the pink-haired girl up. Unfortunately for the Nara, that didn't cause her to fall out of the circle. Instead, it caused her to be twice as angry as she charged once again. Shanro. She yelled, her fist heading for a direct path towards the Nara's head, who in turn simply moved to the side before putting her leg into the same path as before, this time causing Sakura to jump, which in turn made it so that she couldn't avoid the knee that slammed into her back. As a result, giving a deep sigh while putting her hands back into her pockets, Nara sent an even look towards the girl that she had just hit. What a drag, I seriously want to give up, but I can't at this point. Would it just make my life easier and give up already? Like hell. Sakura screamed in response despite the fact that she was obviously in a fair amount of pain from the knee to the back. Letting yet another sigh to escape her, Nara looked towards the girl that was still on the ground. Seriously, did this girl even train? If she did, then a knee to the back like that wouldn't have kept her on the ground for so long. Seriously, she took harder hits at home when her dad decided to train her in something other than strategy. She wasn't even going to bring in what her mother did with her training. Chunin may have been, but it wasn't because of her strength that she stayed that rank. Moving to the side once more at the punch that was sent her way from the pink-haired Kunoichi in training, Shika sighed again. Seriously, did this girl even know that she had just done the same thing 3 times in a row already? It was like she didn't even care that no matter what she did about her training. Sure, Sakura was smart, being the top Kunoichi in the grade showed that much, but she was telegraphing her attacks too much. If the fact that she wasn't even trying to dodge the Pinkette's attack said anything, then it was that she was book smart but woefully inadequate with other things. Seriously? 4 times in a row doing the same thing. She mumbled as the pink-haired girl sent yet another punch at Shikamaru, which she dodged once again. If you're going to fight, then at least put some effort into it. Another growl made its way out of Sakura's throat as she yelled, like you have any room to talk. You're not even fighting back. You do realize that you haven't been able to hit me once, right? The black-haired girl asked as she moved out of the way of another punch. What a drag, and here I was hoping to be able to nap in class for once. Ignoring the glare that she was getting from Iruka since she had said that out loud, getting snickers from a lot of classmates, Shikamaru let out another sigh, considering she probably wasted half of the first lesson of the day and she wouldn't be able to stall any longer even if she wanted to. Moving out of the way of another attack, Shikamaru's hands left her pockets as she moved her hands out and sent a palm strike to the pink-haired girl's back, sending her tumbling out of the circle. Shasha Shikamaru. Iruka spoke with a final tone, but a surprised one nonetheless. From the looks that she was getting, she knew that people would be looking at her differently soon. If not for the fact that she didn't run away from a fight, then because of the fact that she actually won a match instead of giving up right away. Of course, the only thing she actually paid attention to though was the fact that Naruto and Hinata were cheering in their own way, Choji moving to give a grin towards her, even as he kept his hands on the bag of chips that he usually had with him. Barely taking note of the fact that Iruka had told them all to go back to the classroom, she walked up to them. Ostend. The first person to talk, as it wasn't Naruto, but Choji, as he gave a teasing smirk towards Shika and said, I'm surprised that you didn't just run away from the fight like you normally do so that you can either sleep or watch the clouds. Come on, Choji. You need to have more faith in Shika-chan. Naruto spoke loudly, getting a few annoyed looks from passing classmates, which he ignored with his bright grin still in place. I knew that she was going to win. Hinata, in turn, giggled a bit, her face a bit red, as she poked her fingers together shyly, even as her eyes darted between Naruto and Shika. Don't lie to Naruto-kun. You thought Shikamaru-chan was going to run away as well. Whose side are you on? Naruto yelled with his face a bit red, even as a lazy laugh came from Shikamaru, getting an indignant moan from the blonde, not you too Shika-chan. Giving a half smirk, Nara pocketed her hands as she walked beside her three friends. I'd say this is a drag, but that'd be a bit too predictable, you know. Might as well take a page from the blonde idiot's book. All four of them burst into laughter, even as Naruto rubbed the back of his head in embarrassment. It was obvious enough that he wasn't used to joking still, but that didn't really matter. The four of them were thick as thieves, and it would take a lot to change that. Unbidden, a dark thought seeped into the back of Nara's thoughts about what was going to happen when they became genin, before she forced it away. They still had a few years before that, and it wasn't really worth it to think about it. Thinking over a few things, Nara laid back in her seat the second that she got into the classroom, her black eyes scanning the room. A lot of the students ignored the four of them as they sat in relative proximity, Shino Aburam and Kiba sitting in front of her, Naruto and Hinata, with Choji, the six of them being closer than the rest of the class if everyone was serious. Shino, well quite, didn't have a problem with Naruto like the rest of the class, and that put him into Shika's good books, unless he did something stupid. Kiba, on the other hand, liked to roughhouse with Naruto when he could get away with it. Honestly, she didn't know who had more energy at times, the dog in a human's body or the Energizer bunny from hell. The chuckle that escaped her at that thought got some confused looks from her five friends, but seriously, it was just funny to think about it. The amusement quickly disappeared when her eyes landed on Mizuki-sensei again. While she had barely any knowledge of the place she had ended up, this bastard was one thing she couldn't forget no matter what she did. Considering that he had only recently begun to be Iruka's assistant, she hadn't thought up a lot of things to do to him, but she was going to. Thinking about it, she was going to have to ask Naruto when got the chance to plan things out with him. Maybe even get her friends to help her with this endeavor. Shikamaru had to suppress the evil smirk that threatened to appear on her face at the fact that she was going to make this man's life a living hell. She would need to learn his habits a bit more before she could be certain, but once she did, then he was going to wish she wasn't a part of the class. Either way though, she needed to make sure it wasn't too bad since she didn't want him to leave the class. Letting out a yawn, the black-haired girl looked towards her teacher before her eyes started to feel heavy. She had managed this long, which was a record to be honest, but it was time for her to sleep. She couldn't fight it any longer. Seeing the amused look she got from the Hyuga heiress, she knew that Hinata was going to lord this over her, but to be honest, she couldn't care less. After giving the girl a look that said go on without me, her eyes slipped closed without missing the giggle, and her eyes closed shut, barely noticing the comforting feeling she got from both of her classmates. You know, you could have woken me up before Iruka threw an eraser at my head. Shikamaru grumbled even as she laid against a tree that was in the playground area of the school where she and her friend sat during lunchtime, sporting a nice lump on her forehead. The grinning Naruto just gave a loud laugh as he said, hey, you're the one who's lazy enough to sleep in the middle of one of Iruka-sensei's lectures. I have to agree with the idiot this time. Kiba snickered, even as Akamaru barked with him in agreement. The blonde, however, didn't appreciate the comment as he glared at Kiba. What was that you mutt? You heard me, you dumbus. Kiba yelled, which in turn caused Naruto to tackle him to the ground, both of them rolling around, getting an exasperated huff from the Ninken puppy. The rest of the group just let out amused expressions or sounds as the two started to fight with each other again. Honestly, this was such a common occurrence that it didn't even surprise them anymore. Shikamaru let out a smirk as well before she took out her journal and decided that it was time to write another entry into the same book she kept things in most of the time. It probably wasn't the best time, but it was something she wanted to do, never wanting to forget her experiences. Thinking over it for a second, a smile made its way onto her face as she thought of where to start. What a drag. First I get forced to walk around the village, even if it is my first time outside of the village, I was only 3 damn it. Why did my parents have to force me to go outside when all I wanted to do was watch the clouds for once? I never really had the chance to before, and that was definitely annoying. I mean, I don't ask for a lot, so is letting me watch the clouds for once too much to ask? I seriously hadn't been outside of the house all that much. But no, they just had to put me out into the open. Anyway, moving on, I realized just how big the place I lived in was when my dad, Shikaku, brought me outside of the clan compound. Of course, the second that I saw the giant faces on the mountain, my mind went blank. I mean, wouldn't you do the same thing if you saw something that you could have sworn was fictional in front of you, in person for that matter? Seriously, there were 4 giant faces on a cliff in the distance, with a large building that had the kanji for fire on it, not too far off from where we currently were, and that was more than enough to make my mind go blank for a second. High IQ. Or not, if you were startled enough, anyone would freeze in shock. Thankfully, my dad took it in a way that I was incredibly impressed by the village, which was also part of the reason I froze, but not the whole thing, which was why he said I had the same reaction when I was your age, and I saw Konoha. This is the reason that I became a shinobi, Shikamaru-chan. I want this to stay standing for a long time to come, and what better way than to do so from a high position where I can actually influence things. I get that you want me to be a shinobi, Jai-san, but isn't that laying it a bit thick? I had asked with a slightly annoyed look towards my dad. I was advanced for my age with words, but I was about average with everything else, to be honest. Well, my intelligence was a lot higher than normal considering everything my dad did when I was still a little girl, but now so much. I wasn't near what my father was in terms of IQ. And I don't think I ever will be, but I was definitely above most kids my age. Of course, at the same time, I did things that would increase my thinking more as I grew. Lazy as I was, I knew training when I saw it. Getting a chuckle out of my father for my comment, the man just shrugged. I'm not exactly subtle about asking you to be a kunoichi, I know, but it's easier than becoming a civilian and living, you know. At least, as a shinobi you have some control over your life. Now you're pushing it too much. I responded right back, the annoyance replaced with an even tone that most people would misunderstand as annoyance still, but where are we going anyway? Are we going to visit Choji-san? To my surprise, my dad had actually shook his head at that as he continued to lead me through the streets of Konoha, many people giving him smiles and congrats on having a cute daughter, as they put it. My annoyance at them only grew as we continued on our way before it vanished when I saw that we were at a park. I gave my dad a blank look, looking to ask him what they were here for, but I cut myself off when I saw a blonde boy on a swing, a look on his face. I looked around to see why no one was playing with him, only to see parents giving him glares while scolding their children about something. Narrowing my eyes a bit, I took a hesitant step forward, only for my dad to grab my shoulder, crouching to my level. Listen, Shikamaru, I'm not going to delude myself thinking that you're a naive little girl. That boy, he's shunned by most of the village for reasons I can't tell you. I'm not telling you to stay away from him. What I'm saying is, I let you decide what to do for yourself. Do what you think is best. I won't judge you either way. Pausing to take his words in, I stared at him for a few seconds before turning back towards the blonde boy, a look of motivation appearing in my eyes that would normally be considered uncharacteristic for a Nara. Looking back towards my father one last time, taking in his slightly surprised but hopeful look, I walked forward without looking back. I didn't know what was going to happen when I talked to the blonde, but I never regretted it, even now. After all, that blonde turned out to be my best friend, one I know that would go to hell and back for me. Funny really considering I'm a Nara and I do the same thing with a smile on my face the whole way. Shikamaru gave a sigh as she finished writing up what she had in her journal, a smile on her face, before a scowl replaced it. As she saw that the rest of her friends were staring at her with amused looks, what a drag, don't you guys have something better to do than stare at me while I'm writing in my journal? I still say it's a diary. Guys are the only ones who have journals. Kiba yelled with his same cocky tone of voice, even with dirt covering him. Rolling her eyes, Nara gave up with him before she remembered something. Hey, are you guys willing to come over after school tomorrow? It'd be kinda nice to have some of my friends over for once instead of me going over to wherever you live. The rest of the group shared a look between them, none of them really surprised by the invitation, but they also knew that Shikamaru was right. The Nara had always gone over to one of the others' houses, all of them coordinating play dates, as it were, with Naruto involved, as well. While the blonde wasn't welcome in the Hyuga compound, he was welcomed with open arms pretty much everywhere else. Even Shino, who was normally silent, had everyone over to the Aburam compound once. No one in the ground really cared about the bugs, and that had earned them the favor of the clan, as well. Naruto was the first one to answer, with a shrug, as he said, with his hands behind his head. I guess I can. I was planning a prank or two on the villagers tomorrow, but I don't think that's as important as hanging out with my best friend. Naruto-kun, that isn't nice. Hinata spoke with a reprimanding tone despite her shyness, causing her face to be red as she spoke, but the fond smile on her face still stayed. But I think I should be able to come tomorrow, Shikamaru-chan. I would have to lie to Otu-sama about it being for training though. Letting out a sigh at that, Shikamaru made sure to let her annoyance be known. Needless to say, everyone else didn't look too happy about the reminder either. They all knew that Hinata's dad wasn't the best of fathers, but none of them could really do anything about it either. All of them were the heirs to their respective clans, but that was just it, heirs. They weren't in any position to try and help Hinata other than to give her support where she needed it. To be honest, they helped her out with her confidence a lot as well, considering she didn't faint at the sight of Naruto or Shikamaru for that matter when they talked now, unlike before. The two really did wonders for her confidence, but she was still extremely shy and she didn't have a mean bone in her body, considering the fact that she actually apologized after a match where she beat someone. It was kind of sweet thinking about it, but at the same time, Shikamaru knew that she wouldn't be able to do that once they all became actual shinobi. Deciding to ignore it for the time being, Nara looked towards his friends, even knowing that their lunch period was almost done. She had a reason to fight, that much was certain at the very least. Motivation was a strong force, and even for someone as lazy as Shikamaru, she was determined to keep going. Though, there was a part of her that seemed to laugh at the determination, she squashed it. She wasn't going to have any doubts now, not while she had the ability to actually do something. Letting out another yawn, as she walked back to her clan's compound, a shift of her eyes showed that she was scanning the area around her still to make sure that no one was going to bother her. But of course, that didn't last long as a blonde girl ran right up to her, blue eyes narrowed in anger. Shika barely had the chance to look in her direction before a fist hit her in the side of the head, sending Nara tumbling to the ground, holding her cheek. "The hell?" Shikamaru asked with narrowed eyes at the blonde in front of him. "What was that for you, troublesome blonde?" The girl let out a growl as she pointed right towards Shikamaru. "You know exactly what that was for, you lazy bum. Apologize, now." "Man, you know what? I'm sorry, there." The Nara spoke, trying to get things over with, even as she stood up, only to get another fist to the other cheek, this time by a pink-haired brat who had appeared not too far away. Sakura pulled off the same pose as the blonde brat that was beside her as she yelled, "Don't half-ass it. Apologize correctly. What a drag, can't you two just leave me alone? I wanted to get home and take a nice warm bath before dad got home." The girl on the ground groaned in annoyance. Wasn't that the truth though? Her dad never left her any hot water when he got home before she did, and that was something that was just going to make things even worse, as far as she was concerned. First, she managed to win a fight and get stared at in class the whole time, even the Uchiha was looking at her. Then there was the incident that left her with a bump on her head because of Iruka-sensei. And now there was this. Why couldn't she just be left alone so she could take a hot bath? Seriously, she would go to the hot springs if she could, but you had to either be a genin or have an adult go with you, and her mother didn't like public baths, so that was out of the picture as well. What the hell? A loud voice screamed at the top of their lungs, causing the black-haired girl to pause and stumble a bit at just how loud the voice was. Sending an annoyed look in the direction of Naruto's apartment, Shikamaru knew that the idiot had something to do with this, but from the sound of it, the blonde wasn't in any trouble, which was why she completely ignored the voice and continued to walk forward. She wasn't getting involved with whatever that was, that much was for certain. Shikamaru was taking out her thoughts as she rolled backwards to get back onto her feet, seeing that the two had tried to attack her once again. Letting out a groan of annoyance at not only the fact that she got into yet another fight, but the fact that this was attracting a crowd as well. She could have sworn there was an Anbu watching as well, not even being obvious about hiding if she could see them. Moving out of the way of yet another attack from the two, by simply backing to do so, the Nara groaned in annoyance once more. "Come on you two, just knock it off, you're causing a scene and being troublesome, damn it. Not until you apologize." The two screamed at the top of their lungs at the same time. The groan of annoyance turned into aggravation as her eyes narrowed in annoyance once more and looked around the area as he put a bit of distance between the two of them. Around them were several vendors, all of which were watching, and a few barrels as well, not too much out in the open. The crowd of people limited her movements due to them circling the three girls, but at the same time it also limited them. She knew that using jutsu wouldn't be a smart idea, especially given her age, so that was out as well, but there was still something she could do. The ground was a bit uneven under her sandals and seemed to be a bit grainy as well. Scanning the ground for a second, the Nara dodged to the side as the two attacked once again, kicking up a bit of dust in the process. Turning away from the two so that she could get into position, the black-haired girl waited once more before moving out of the way, causing the two to hit a particularly loose area of the ground, sending up dust and dirt that got into their eyes and also caused yells of indignation. Ignoring that for the time being, the Nara moved behind the two girls before shoving them forward, sending them tumbling into two barrels that had the tops open but didn't have anything in them. The loud yells of anger from the two was Nara's cue to disappear. Turning around, Shikamaru was about to run, but her blood froze at the sight in front of her. Standing in front of a crowd of civilians was her father, the head of the Amanaka clan, standing right beside him. Shikamaru's wide eyes was the only thing that her father managed to see before a fist crashed into her skull, causing her to clutch her head in pain while crumpling to the ground with a yell of pain. The black-haired girl really didn't know what happened after that, but what she did know was that someone picked her up, and before she knew it, her mother was in front of her holding an ice pack to the top of her head. Neither of her parents seemed to be angry at her, though her father did have a calculated look on his face as he sat across from her. Shika winced a bit when the ice pack moved across a particularly sore part of her head, her face being fine surprisingly. But the silence stretching out, the black-haired girl started to feel awkward at her father's stare before she sighed and decided to try and say something. What happened at school to cause those two to attack Shikamaru? Shikaku suddenly spoke, causing the child to wince a bit once again at the two mentioned. Giving her father an even look, but serious nonetheless, the kunoichi in training said those two are idiots honestly. They attacked me because I defended Naruto, and then I beat the pink one in a fight today. So you were really serious about doing this, huh? Shikaku spoke, despite the confusion that was on his wife's face. You're actually aiming to not only be the rookie of the year, but the top kunoichi. Shikamaru gave a sigh before nodding and looking towards the shocked look of her mother. I'm not going to stop being lazy just so you know. Of course not. The woman spoke with disappointment obvious in her voice, though there was a bit of pride in it as well. I get that I'm a bit unreasonable at times, but I do trust both you and your father, you know. Both of the blood-related Naras shared a look that the woman missed that showed they didn't believe it, but they also made sure to look away soon after. Shikamaru, figuring that it would be better for her to continue, spoke of what she did during the fight, her father giving his input alongside her mother on the fight. She was still getting used to the idea that she was actually going to put effort into what she was doing, but she listened anyway. Evidently though, as she continued to talk, her father gained an amused look, almost like he understood something that she didn't. But the explanation's over, after telling them about the invitation she gave, both of her parents had an amused glint in their eyes, though her mother spoke before she could question it. Well, I'm just glad you're safe. It would be too troublesome if you ended up injured now of all times. I also have some news for you, Shikamaru. Shikaku spoke, ignoring the fact that his wife had called something troublesome without realizing it. I got things going in the right direction with the teams. It won't happen this year, I couldn't get that, but instead I managed to get it so that next year will be when it starts. You still have a few years to go before you graduate, so I wouldn't worry about it for now. There was something that he wasn't telling her, that much Shikamaru could tell, but with a sigh, she put her hand onto her head, making it so that the ice pack didn't move as she tried to get more comfortable in the chair she was sitting in. Can I just sleep here for once? I don't think I'll be able to move without getting a headache in the process. The older of the two Naras looked towards his wife with a raised eyebrow, causing her to roll her eyes in the process, while crossing her arms. Fine, just this once, okay? I don't like the idea, but just this once is fine. Shika gave her mother one last smile that showed her thanks before she got comfortable and fell into the embrace of sleep instantly. If only she knew what tomorrow would bring. Shikaku let out a sigh as he looked around for the kids that his daughter called friends. He knew that one of them was the troubled child of Konoha, Naruto Uzumaki, but the others were a mystery to him considering the fact that they had never actually been to his house before. That actually annoyed him a bit, but he assumed that was more because of the fact that she had never gotten the chance to invite them over. Well, no matter what, tomorrow was the 22nd, and since it was September, he was certain that the rest of them didn't know her birthday. She hadn't invited anyone over for her birthday the last 4 years since she thought it was too troublesome for people to celebrate the day she made it into this world. That was what she had said, but there seemed to be something else that was keeping her from telling anyone her birthday. It was almost like she didn't think of her birthday being the 22nd of September. He could read people, his daughter as well, but he couldn't understand why she was like that. There always seemed to be a bit of a melancholy feeling around her during the 7th of April, but other than that, there wasn't anything that he actually could see that would be the problem. He was certain that she would tell him eventually, but the question would be when she would open up. Ignoring that for the time being, Shikaku, in a henge, walked up to the teacher's lounge before dispelling said henge. He didn't want his daughter finding out about this after all. Knocking on the door and waiting a second, Shikaku's eyes landed on Mizuki, the teacher's assistant. The white-haired sent a wide-eyed look towards the Jonin commander before he swallowed thickly and let go of the door. The guy's nervousness was understandable, but the fear was something that caused Shikaku to narrow his eyes a bit in suspicion. Deciding to leave that alone for the moment considering what he was trying to do, Nara put his hands into his pockets. I'm looking for Yumi no Ruka. Shikaku asked while looking at the Chunin in front of him with a hard gaze, showing that he wasn't going to go away until he talked to the person that he was looking for. Swallowing thickly, the Chunin led the Jonin commander into the room and to the teacher that he was looking for, who was currently grading some papers with a sigh. Iruka-san. There's someone here to see you. Looking up from his paperwork, the teacher was about to say that he had work to do and that it could wait until he saw who it was. The same wide-eyed look appeared on Chunan's face, but his expression didn't show fear, at least not in the same way that Mizuki did. That was suspicious enough to warrant an investigation on the other Chunin, but just as before, it could wait for the time being. This was more important as far as he was concerned considering the fact that it involved his family. He didn't understand why his daughter didn't want her friends to know what was going on, but he was going to make her smile tomorrow at the very least. It was her birthday after all. "Are you mean Oruka correct?" The Jonin commander asked with a serious tone as he took a folding chair and set it in front of the teacher after Mizuki left. "You are not close to being in trouble, just so you know. I just have a few questions for you actually." Calming his breath, the teacher set down his pen before putting his hands in front of him. "Sure, what do you need from me? I'll help if I can. I need to know who my daughter is friends with, to be honest." The father responded right back, a smirk on his face as he leaned back a bit in the chair. "I was planning on something for tomorrow and I need to find her friends so that I can set it into motion." The teacher's look soured a bit at that as he sighed, putting a hand to his forehead and nodding after a few seconds. "I understand. The group that she tends to stick around usually is Hinata Hyuga, Kiba Inuzuka, Shino Aburam, and Choji Akimichi. I'm sure you know who your daughter's best friend is, so I didn't think I needed to tell you that." Shikaku gave a nod and a thanks to the Chunin, though his eyes did end up narrowing a bit when he realized the barely hidden contempt for Naruto in the man's voice. He didn't blame the man though, considering the fact that it was mainly along the lines of uncertainty than true anger. He wouldn't be surprised if the man became Naruto's best friend not even a few months from now. That just seemed to be how the blonde worked, considering the fact that he was friends with the rest of those clan heirs as well. Walking out of the academy, the elder Nara sighed as he realized that he was going to have to talk to Hiashi again after not even 2 hours. Hinata would no doubt be home by now, and that meant that he was going to have to go to the Hyuga compound to try and convince the man that his daughter should come to Shikamaru's birthday party tomorrow. Shikaku had nothing against the man, but he could be a bit stuck up, but he wasn't as bad as some of the other Hyuga, as far as he could tell just from going to the compound once. Getting those thoughts out of his head for the time being, the scared man decided to speed things up and get the Hyuga compound using Shunshin. He knew that it would surprise a few of the Hyuga that often stood guard at the gates, but it was mainly because he was in a rush in the first place that he was willing to do it. The things he would do for his little girl, not that he would ever be able to call her that out loud. He shuddered a bit just thinking of the stuff that the heiress could do if she called in a favor from the blonde knucklehead. That wasn't something that he was going to test. Unfortunately for Shikaku, he was right when it came to causing the Hyuga to jump when he appeared, though at the same time, it would seem that they didn't attack, so that was a blessing at the very least. Heading into the compound wasn't that big of a problem either after saying that he needed to talk to Hiashi, though now that he was in, he was going to need to make sure that he planned things out. If there was any clan that could give Nara a run for their money with mind games, it was the Hyuga. Especially since they could mask their emotions so easily. Sitting in a traditional Seiza position, Nara waited in the guest area for the Hyuga he was aiming to talk to, and thankfully, it didn't take long for Hiashi to arrive. He could see the neutral look on the man's face, though his eyes betrayed the confusion that he had as to why Shikaku was here in the first place. Thinking about it for a brief second, Shikaku didn't think there would be too much trouble convincing the Hyuga to let his daughter attend Shikamaru's birthday party. "Shikaku-san. I did not expect a visit from you. What is it that I may help you with?" The Hyuga spoke with his normal formal tone, though the slight inflection of curiosity in his voice was there, something that only a trained shinobi would be able to catch, and even then it was hard to hear. Giving as formal a bow in his sitting position as he was willing to allow, Nara said, "I'm here to ask if your daughter would be able to attend my own birthday tomorrow. Shikamaru hasn't told anyone her birthday, despite the fact that I know that a lot of them had joined her first birthday, but this time I wanted to surprise her, and considering Hinata is one of Shika's friends, I wish to invite her." Such short notice. Hiashi spoke with a frown, though he didn't immediately dismiss it and instead thought over it for a second before nodding. "Very well, I will allow her to attend, and I shall have it scheduled that she may stay the night if such an option is presented to her. I suspect that a present, while not needed, would be welcome." Shikaku gave a nod with that. "Yeah, I don't think that Shikamaru would care all that much about presents considering everything, but if you think Hinata should bring one, I won't stop you." Giving one more nod, the Hyuga head stood up while inclining his head. "I wish to thank you for informing me of this. While I do not necessarily agree with my daughter not training tomorrow, I will not protest, as your daughter has proved to be the confidence booster that Hinata sorely needed. She and Hanabi are evenly matched, as it is now, and that has caused a shortage of headaches for me." Neither Jounin needed to talk to know what that meant exactly, since they both knew. Not even thinking about it, Shikaku left and went towards his next visit, the Inyazuka clan. To be honest, the Nara never understood why the strictest clan was situated right next to the rowdiest of them, but it wasn't something that he was going to bother trying to figure out. It had caused him many headaches as a kid thinking about it. The normal person had upwards of 70,000 thoughts per day, with a genius having even more. It really wasn't a surprise that laziness was a habit for a lot of the Nara clan's members considering this. As it turned out, he didn't even need to get into the compound before he had Tsume bowling him over, asking him why Shikamaru never told Kiba her birthday. Word between the two clans traveled fast, and after giving the same talk to the Inyazuka, she agreed to have Kiba and Akamaru over tomorrow, as soon as she could manage to get him over. The smirk made its way onto Nara's face at the excited look that the clan head had, even as she crashed straight through her clan's gate, yelling at the top of her lungs for Kiba. Whatever it was that had Tsume going crazy right now was amusing, and he was just glad that he didn't have to deal with it. A crazy Inyazuka was one of those things you never really knew how to deal with and never really wanted to either. Getting Choji able to come wasn't that hard either, all things considered, especially since Shikaku found him on the way through the market area, a large amount of food on his person. But how the Akamichi eat, it didn't really surprise him all that much, but of course, having Choji there was well helped. Finishing that up as fast as he could, Shikaku headed towards Naruto Uzumaki's apartment next. He knew that the boy hadn't met him, so he was planning on seeing the boy either glaring at him in confusion or staring at him in fear. "Ah. You have to be Shika-chan's dad," was the response that the blonde yelled when he saw the scarred visage of the man in front of him. "I mean, you two do look a lot alike, though you're a bit scarier with the scars on your face." An amused look appeared on Shikaku's face at the blunt tone that the blonde had spoken with, even as he motioned for wanting inside of the house. That was enough to cause a bit of suspicion to appear in the blonde's eyes, but he did what he was asked anyway. Shikaku figured that he was being cautious because of how not too many people actually liked him, but he hadn't done anything to cause the blonde to not like him yet, though there was no reason for him to trust the Jonin commander either, something that Shikaku was aiming to change. Sitting down on a couch that looked like it had seen better days, the Jonin commander put his hands together as the blonde sat across from him in an equally roughed up wooden chair. "Alright Naruto, I'm curious about something. What do you think of Shikamaru?" "I think she's awesome." Naruto spoke with a large grin, his blue eyes lighting up in happiness as he talked. "Shika-chan can be kind of scary when she's mad at me, usually when I wake her up, but she's really nice too. She was my first friend and she didn't care about what the other parent said to her about leaving me alone. I don't know what would have happened if I didn't become friends with her, but she gave Hinata-chan a big confidence boost as well. I didn't understand it at first when Hinata-chan fainted around the two of us, but after Shika-chan explained it, I got it and tried to help her." Shikaku's eyes narrowed a bit as he leaned forwards, a smirk on his face. "Does this mean that you have a crush on my daughter Naruto-san?" Play Naruto asked. Fooling mode. The blonde's blue eyes went really wide at that question before he screamed at the top of his lungs, "What the hell?" Outside of the apartment several people, including Shikamaru, paused or stumbled due to the loud voice. Even a few birds flew off due to it, though the black-haired Kunoichi sent an annoyed look in Naruto's apartment's direction. Shikaku, on the other hand, was snickering internally at the shock that the blonde had displayed. He was certain that the Hokage had heard it all the way from the Hokage tower for that matter. What would you even ask? I mean, aren't dads supposed to be really protective of their daughters or something? The blonde asked, while backing up a bit, the panic obvious in his voice as he looked towards the Jonin commander. Giving a smirk, Shikaku shrugged. "Well, I mean, Shikamaru can take care of herself, so why would I need to be overprotective? Any idiot that hurts her would end up having to deal with her after all. That doesn't mean that you should ask a question like that out of nowhere, damn it." Naruto yelled once again, pointing his finger at Shikaku once again, showing that he wasn't happy with this. Feigning a slightly chagrined expression, the Jounin slumped in his chair. "Come on, is it so much to ask for Shikamaru to actually have someone who likes her?" But the blonde started before he hung his head in a similar manner to the man in front of him. "No, it's not. Ostend." About a minute later, the two men were across from each other once again, all joking aside, as Shikaku said, "Well, I originally came here to ask if you would be willing to distract Shikamaru for most of tomorrow, as me and the rest of your friends set everything up for her birthday party. I'm guessing that she hasn't even told you that day." "No, she hasn't, as a matter of fact." The blonde spoke with squinted eyes, his arms crossed, even with his head facing in Shikaku's direction. "But I have noticed that she tends to be a bit depressed around this time of year. I don't get what's up with that, but I'll help if you think she'll smile because of it." Giving a nod and a smile towards the blonde, the Nara clan head stood up. "I don't expect you to bring anything for a present tomorrow, but I won't argue if you do. I mean, my daughter's best friend should know what she likes, right? You're not trying to guilt trip me, are you, old man? Naruto asked, his squinted eyes under downturned eyebrows showing annoyance. You wouldn't have to in the first place, I mean, I'd do this type of thing without asking. Making her happy, I mean. Shikaku let out an amused smile towards the blonde as he stood up to leave, putting his hand on top of the academy student's head, getting a narrow-eyed look of confusion. Well, just make sure to treat her right when you finally get the courage to ask her out. Nara left the frozen blonde, who started yelling in frustration the second that he managed to get out of the apartment, something that caused yet another smirk to appear on Shikaku's face. It was plain as day, even for him, that the blonde had a crush on Shikamaru already. Though that did cause him to wonder about the Hyuga girl that she was friends with as well. The girl had been given a confidence boost if what he heard was right, so where did that leave her in the whole situation? Deciding that it was best not to get into that for the time being, Shikaku paused as he spotted a familiar blonde head in the crowd that was gathered in front of him. Frowning slightly, Nara walked through the crowd of civilians to stand next to Inoichi, right as he saw his daughter move out of the way of the attack of Inoichi's daughter and a pink-haired girl, sending a small amount of dust up into the air. Seeing how she had moved to a different part of the circle, Shikaku's eyes started to analyze what his daughter was doing before a soft smirk made its way onto his face as he saw the soft dirt underfoot. The two girls trying to hit Shika charged at her once again, showing that their training was still lacking before they hit the spot that his daughter had been a second before. The dust that was sent upwards caused the two that attacked to start coughing due to the fact that there was just so much of it. Shikamaru took the chance a second later to push the two girls into a couple of empty barrels that were near the spot that the dust had been picked up at. Turning around, it looked like she was about to get out of there as fast as she could, but she seemed to freeze at the sight of her father. Shikaku's scowl grew, however, once the two girls that Shikamaru had dealt with hit her in the back of the head, causing her to crumple in on herself in pain. Alright, that's enough. You two, what the hell was that for? The two girls, with still angry looks on their faces, were about to say something obviously, but Inoichi's daughter stopped when she saw who it was, her skin going even more pale if that was possible. The pink-haired girl, however, obviously didn't know who it was. As she yelled, what does it matter to you? Well, considering I'm a clan head, jounin commander, and father to the girl you punched. A lot. Shikaku spoke with a lazy tone, which caused the pink-haired girl to pale, as well, even, as Nara looked towards his friend. Think you can deal with these two? I need to get Shika to Yoshino. Inoichi gave a smile towards his friend, along with a nod. Yeah, I can do that. I hope that me and Choza are invited for tomorrow as well. Like I would leave you two out of it. Nara spoke as he picked Shikamaru up, seeing just how large the lump on her head actually was and the fact that she still had her eyes closed at the moment. Whatever that pink-haired girl did, it would seem that she was considerably stronger than she made herself out to be. After explaining everything to her and letting her sleep on the couch, Yoshino and Shikaku decided to talk in the kitchen about tomorrow. It would seem that while Yoshino didn't have a problem with it, Shikaku would need to help with everything as well. To his wife's surprise, though, he actually agreed to it. She was pleasantly surprised nonetheless about that and had even agreed to do most of the cooking, so long as he did everything else with whoever it was that was going to help him. The only thing now was getting his daughter distracted for the day. He really hoped that Naruto would be able to help out with that, even if the blonde already said that he was going to try at the very least. Letting out a groan of annoyance, Shikamaru tried to get back to sleep, but after a loud crash in the kitchen had sounded off, she couldn't manage to, no matter what she did. Guess that served her right for wanting to sleep in the living room for once. Despite how comfortable the couch was, the Nara heiress should have figured out that it was going to be loud once her mother started to do what she normally did when it came to breakfast. The only problem, though, was the fact that it didn't smell like eggs or bacon coming from the kitchen this time. Frowning a bit in confusion, the 10-year-old took the blanket off of her, about to get up and go into the kitchen, only for a certain head of blonde hair to catch her attention out of the corner of her eye. The blonde, it would seem, was trying to sneak up on her, but that seemed a bit moot at this point. Letting out a lazy sigh, the dark-haired girl took a single step back, causing Naruto to completely miss the girl, with a loud squawk of surprise and indignation. He ended up landing with both of his arms crossed, but still held out in front of him, with wide blue eyes. Looking down towards her best friend, Nara put a hand to her head. Ah geez, what are you doing here so early, Naruto? I would have met up with you later today if you had asked yesterday. I mean, I thought you guys were coming over here and all, and I didn't know you knew where I lived. I wanted to invite you to have breakfast with me. The blonde let out with crossed arms after sitting with his legs and arms crossed on the floor, a scowl on his face under his goggles. Come on, Shikamaru-chan, you never eat breakfast with me. Giving a flat look towards the blonde, she crossed her arms as well while looking at said boy. That's usually because of what you get for breakfast. I can't live on ramen, you know. Well fine, I guess you don't want the miso and mackerel then. Naruto spoke with a stubborn tone as he turned away from Nara with a scowl. I went through all this trouble to find out where you live and ask your dad what your favorite food was, and now you're acting like this. Swallowing thickly to try and keep the saliva down, the black-haired girl took a step forward. Now wait just a minute. I said I can't live on ramen, I didn't say I didn't like the stuff, but does Ichiraku even sell mackerel? Of course they do. I mean, they have fish cakes with ramen, as well, you know. Naruto spoke, his blue eyes scrutinizing his best friend to make sure that she didn't insult his favorite food. So are you coming or not? Shika stayed silent for a second before she swallowed thickly once again and said, just let me get dressed. The grin of victory on the blonde's face was enough to sour her mood a little, but she decided to ignore that for the time being. She never had to deal with this before, a friend that actually cared enough to find her house to ask her parents things. This life or the last, it didn't matter, she wasn't used to it. That, of course, didn't mean that she wasn't going to be happy with this. If Ichiraku was serving her favorite foods, then she was probably going to visit the place more, though she wasn't going to live off of it like a certain blonde idiot. Ignoring those thoughts for the time being, the black-haired kunoichi in training decided to change things up a bit, and instead of grabbing the same old t-shirt with a Nara symbol on it and a pair of black pants, she grabbed a pair of shorts that stopped just above her knees. And a black tank top that was a bit too big for her. Throwing a long-sleeved green shirt over it, the front open, the girl was ready, and considering that the clothes were actually breathable, she could defend herself in case two fangirls decided that they wanted to try and attack her again. Letting out a yawn due to still not being completely awake despite being up for at least 10 minutes now, Shikamaru put her hands in the pockets of her shorts while going downstairs. Putting a hand to her mouth while yet another yawn made its way out of her mouth, Nara looked towards Naruto, who was starting to stare at her. Raising an eyebrow at the boy, he blinked a few times before getting up and leading the way a bit faster than what was really needed, though it was still slow enough that Shikamaru could follow at her normal pace. Naruto was conflicted. He knew that he needed to distract her friend so that Shikaku could finish everything else that they needed to plan at the clan compound, but the fact was, he didn't expect the girl that he was accompanying to be actually willing to come with him, bribe or not. He thought that he was going to have to actually fight with her a bit to actually get her to come along, so the fact that after just mentioning the girl's favorite food, she was more than willing to come along, was a little surprising to say the least. Now though, he had no clue what he was going to do after the two of them finished eating. From what the girl's father had said, he would need to distract her for at least a few hours, but eating would only distract her for a half hour at the most. So when they arrived at Ichiraku and he said that he was going to pay for it this time, he let out a nervous breath as he saw the calculating look that his best friend was sending his way, despite the fact that she wasn't arguing with him. He was going to need to hold back a bit with his own portion at the very least though. So, what are you trying to do with inviting me out here to eat, Naruto? Shikamaru asked with her normal tone of voice as she looked towards the boy, a piece of fish on the way to her mouth between chopsticks. I mean, you don't normally invite us to eat with you outside of school, you know. Naruto froze mid-bite of his own food at her comment before he swallowed thickly and looked away from her, a bit of red on his face in the process. Well, you always seem to be a bit, I dunno, depressed around this time of year. Thought I'd bring you somewhere to get your mind off of whatever it is that gets you down in the dumps. You're an idiot. Shikamaru spoke with a sigh, though the smile on her face showed that she didn't mind it all that much either, at least from what Naruto could tell when he looked towards her. But I'm stupid if I said that you weren't perceptive. I mean, I thought I had a good hold on my emotions so that I didn't worry any of you guys. The blonde let out a nervous chuckle at that comment, putting his chopsticks down for the time being. Well, Hinata noticed too, but she didn't think it was a good idea to mention it. I just followed along with her since she's, you know, better with people. The light chuckle was the response from the black-haired girl as she set down her chopsticks. As well, the miso already gone, but a bit of the mackerel still in front of her. I guess I was a bit obvious with it, haven't I? Nah, I don't think so. Naruto responded a second later, sending a side glance towards his friend. I mean, I'm not the best at noticing things like that, but no one else seemed to have noticed it yet either, with Choji having some, suspicions. Shikamaru supplied an amused look. Giving a nod along with a sound of agreement, the blonde continued. Yeah. He's got a few of those, but I don't think he knows what it is just yet. What is it that bothers you so much about this time of year anyway? Shikamaru stopped for a second as she looked towards her friend, a piece of mackerel halfway to her mouth. Setting it down softly, the black-haired girl let out a sigh as she said, that's not something I'm ready to give up yet, you know. I'm sure you've got things that you don't want me to know. I think I get it. But I'll always be your friend, you know that right? the blonde asked loudly, his face flushing a bit in embarrassment as he spoke. I mean, you have me, Hinata, Kiba, Choji, and Shino too, but don't forget that I'm your best friend, got it? Letting out an amused smile, the black-eyed girl simply nodded at the next piece of fish disappearing from in front of her, along with the last of the miso ramen that had been placed in. Yeah, you troublesome blonde. Just don't get all overprotective of me. An indignant yell was the only response, as 3 occupants of Ichiraku Ramen, aside from the blonde, started to laugh. Despite this though, Shikamaru knew that she would have to tell someone soon, but for the moment, that wasn't going to happen. Was it so wrong that she wanted to have things stay the way they're at the moment for a while? She knew that the shinobi world wasn't going to be so kind to her, or her friends for that matter, but she just couldn't help herself with wanting to keep things the way they were for a while. Even if it meant things being harder on her later on in life. Whatever was going on, Shikaku knew that it was going to annoy him. For the past 3 hours everyone had finished with the decorations, what few there were, and now they were just waiting for Naruto to get back with Shikamaru. The fact that he didn't give the blonde an exact time frame was something that was his own fault, but 3 hours of waiting. That was something that annoyed him to no end. Whatever was going on, the blonde obviously did his job right, but the rest of the adult guests were starting to get irritated. The children, however. I don't know about Choji-kun. I mean, Naruto-kun is unpredictable, so it makes sense. Hinata quietly spoke, the current conversation being about pranks of all things. Shino gave a nod of agreement alongside Kiba, as the Aburam said Naruto-san would be more than able to do so. Why? Because I have heard stories of Naruto managing to outrun Anbu after some of his pranks. The blonde's an idiot when it comes to a lot of things, but even I know not to mess with him when it comes to pranks. Kita spoke, a large grin on his face, Akamaru barking his agreement. Toji, on the other hand, stubbornly stuck with what he thought, as he said I don't know about that. I mean, Iruka-sensei can usually find him, so how would he be able to set up a prank in the classroom without sensei finding out first? Easy, he just goes in right when the academy opens. Kiba loudly spoke in a tone that made it seem like he had the best idea ever. It's what I do. Letting out a soft giggle, the only Hyuga in the group gave a smile towards the Inizuka. You're not wrong, Kiba-kun. Still, I don't think sneaking into the academy early is much like Naruto's style. Yeah, I guess you're right there. The dog owner reluctantly agreed though, what about Shika? I mean, you're best friends with her, and the blonde right? Would she help him with his pranks? Hinata paused for a second before shrugging, showing that she didn't know Shikamaru-chan is hard for anyone to get a read on, and I'm really no different. Shikaku let out an exaggerated sigh as he looked towards Inoichi and Choza, the latter of which was trying to discreetly eat something, but Hiashi, who had decided to join the party, was sending the large man an intense stare, not activated, but it being intimidated nonetheless. The result was the Akamichi to slowly set down the food that he had back onto the table near him. It would seem that even if he wouldn't show it, Hiashi was getting just as annoyed with the situation. It was a good thing that Yoshino had decided to start cooking things a couple of hours ago, or else she would be just as annoyed as the rest of them, and that was something that Shikaku didn't need at the moment. Just shut up about that already. A loud voice suddenly spoke out, the voice recognizable for every single one of the people that were in the Nara house, though that also caused a lot of relief to go through the adults. The lazy light, if that was possible, sounded out after that as the voice of Shikaku's daughter spoke up. Hey, you were the one who decided that it was a good idea at the time. I'm just glad I wasn't caught up in the blast. Didn't really like the idea of smelling rotten fish for a week. I wasn't aiming to hit you anyway. Naruto's indignant voice spoke up, getting a few snickers from the other children that were in the Nara house even, as everyone heard the two getting closer. You know that I was aiming to hit the teachers for being so stupid. A snort was heard from Shikamaru as she stood in front of the door of the house, her silhouette obvious against it, yet all of the teachers, and even a lot of the kids, call you stupid. You know that I'm not stupid. I can be an idiot, but I'm not stupid. Naruto responded right back with indignation obviously. A snicker answered him this time, as the girl he was standing by said going by definitions, those two are pretty much the same thing. You know that right? With a laugh that surprised some of the people inside of the house, Nara opened the door to the house, her black eyes narrowing a bit when she saw most of the lights in the house off. Walking into the house and not seeing anyone, she was immediately put onto her guard, a hand reaching towards the kunai pouch that she usually kept on her person. She couldn't hear anything for that matter either. She couldn't even hear her mother making food, which she should have been doing at this point. It was almost like no one was home. Shikaku let a smirk fall onto his face as he realized that his daughter was taking her training seriously, judging by her reaction, he understood exactly what she was thinking. Though, now that she thought about it, he needed to get her to train with seeing in the dark better. At the moment she was practically blind walking into the house. That was good for the moment considering her reflexes, he hoped, weren't developed enough for her to attack before thinking. Looking to the side and seeing Choza about to turn on the lights, Shikaku nodded before sitting back, so to speak, to watch what happened. The lights flashed on in an instant and everyone jumped up, yelling the exact same word surprise. Shikamaru, in turn, jumped a foot off the ground, literally, as she backed up, her black eyes wide with shock and confusion. Shikaku knew that she was looking around to see her friends, and it would seem that she had even forgotten her own birthday. When the shock gave way to the confusion, Shikaku let out an obvious chuckle, causing his daughter's attention to turn towards him, the questioning look that she sent his way, making the smirk on his face grow a bit. "So you actually forgot what today is, Shikamaru?" Shikaku asked with a smile that showed that he was amused, though his eyes reflected his confusion, as well as why that was. "Or did you not want to celebrate the day you were born into this world?" With all of the adrenaline in her system gone, the black-haired girl sent a glare towards her dad, a hand on her forehead, or maybe it's just that I didn't care either way. The surprise definitely wasn't what I needed at the moment either though. I tried to tell them that it wasn't a good idea for Shikamaru-chan, but they didn't listen to me. Hinata's soft voice spoke, though there was something almost like teasing in her tone, as well. "But you did look kind of cute being startled like that." Shikamaru's face grew into confusion once more, though her cheeks seemed to redden a bit, as well in the process. She had never been called cute before, and the fact that Hinata of all people said it made her confused as to the meaning of the words. Seriously, Hinata was one of her close friends, so was that a compliment or was that teasing? She really couldn't think on that all that much because not too long after that Naruto and Hinata were staring at each other. The blonde was staring at him with the same look that he normally did when he was trying to figure out something. His blue eyes were squinted, and it was obvious that he was trying to figure out just what it was that Hinata was doing on that as well, but the soft-spoken girl had a smile on her face, almost like she had won something. That was definitely something that was confusing for Nara, since she literally had no clue as to what was going on at the moment. Deciding to try and get things going and ignore the staring contest, Nara cleared her throat. With everyone looking at her, she rubbed at the back of her neck in embarrassment before she said, "Well, I guess since everyone is here, we can just get this going." That seemed to be the only cue that the two Akimichi males needed to start eating, though they seemed to be trying to make sure that no one was disgusted by them or that they ate everything so no one else could get food. There was that, and then there was also the fact that Hiashi was making sure to keep an eye on the two, even while he ate at a respectable pace. Internally, Shikamaru smirked at the Hyuga since she knew firsthand just how good her mother's good could be. There was literally nothing better in the girl's opinion, and she was going to ask for the recipes eventually. Letting out a yawn that showed she was getting ready to just head outside so that she could start watching the clouds, the black-haired girl really wasn't surprised when the rest of her friends ended up following her into the backyard. Being the loudest of the group, Kiba, who was normally rowdy, was a bit on the quiet side at the moment, considering he knew just how calming cloud watching could be, let out a thumbs up to show that he would be quiet as well. Ending up in the backyard with a few trees that would easily cover them, the group ended up in a circle. Every single one of them was laying on their backs in the grass, with Hinata and Naruto on the left and right of Shikamaru respectively. Across from Shikamaru was Kiba, who had Shino on his left, between him and Naruto, while to the other side, between him and Hinata, was Choji, who was silently eating from a bag of chips, easily making sure it didn't crinkle. The black-haired girl of the group let a soft smile make its way onto her face as she realized just how comfortable she was getting around the group she was with at the moment. It wasn't a bad thing, that much was for certain, but she knew that she was going to have to tell them about her secret eventually, no matter how much she wished that she didn't need to. Still, that wasn't something that she was going to have to deal with right now. The loud burp echoed through the area a second later, coming from Choji, making even the birds go silent for a second. Everyone moved a bit to stare at the Akimichi, who was blushing bright red, before all of them burst out laughing. These were the days that Shikamaru wished could last forever. Thanks for watching my video. See you next time, till then sayonara.